So I was having a conversation with a coworker, and it was about TikTok. And his primary point was that he had heard that there was a conspiracy theory that TikTok's algorithm within China was designed to promote science and technology and knowledge and try to improve sort of the sense of what is cool is being knowledgeable and smart and functional in society. Whereas the algorithm in America was designed specifically to promote, booty shaking and dumb stuff. The overall intent being that Chinese kids grow up thinking that being smart is cool, whereas American kids grow up thinking being dumb is cool. And I'd heard that conspiracy theory before, but it's pretty easy to debunk. And the way you can debunk it is go look at the countries and the economics and what it is to run an app. So I want to make my video sharing app. I'm a Chinese company. I therefore want to start in my home country. I want to start making my app in China. Basically every app in China is going to have to be approved by the Chinese government. The Chinese government is not going to approve an app that promotes deviant behavior and activity according to the government. So your algorithm within China is going to have to promote stuff that the Chinese government likes, or the Chinese government is just not going to approve your app. Now, your app is proven to be very popular. You want to promote your app in America. You aren't restricted by the American government in the same way. The American government doesn't tend to dictate what kind of content gets promoted on your app. You can promote anything you want. So what you want to do is promote what kids like in America. You promote what kids like. What do kids like? Well, they like booty shaking, and they like jackass dumb stuff, and they like people getting hit in the nuts. That's just the jackass stuff. They like pranks. I mean, these are kids and they're dumb and they like dumb stuff. So you start promoting the dumb stuff so more kids get on your app and they make more dumb stuff. And the cycle continues indefinitely. So for each region you introduce your app to, it would actually make sense to have an algorithm designed to promote something within that region. I mean, we all know that apps, algorithms, they're specific to the individual. Like, we did a little experiment in my office where everyone installed TikTok fresh, and we wanted to see how quickly it could figure out we were men and start like promoting basically girls to us. And it was really, really quick, because one of the interesting aspects of TikTok is it has a couple of points of reference. So like a post on Facebook really has how many people like it. So it's one point of reference. TikTok keeps track very much so of who likes it, who interacts with it, how long people spend on the video. So if it's a 30-second video, how do you watch the full 30 seconds? Do you see it and then move on really quickly? Do you watch multiple loops of the same video? So let's say there's a really attractive woman. I'm going to end up watching that loop, let's say 3-4 times. TikTok now has a sense that I like that woman. So let's find more women like that and stick it on chunkmcbeefchest's timeline. He's going to look at those. I didn't even like it because I don't want anyone to know that I like women. I don't want people to know that I'm being creepy and old and looking at these women. But TikTok knows that if they put the right woman in front of me, I'm going to watch that loop multiple times. And that's what they want. They want you stuck in their loop. So the conspiracy theory aspect of this can actually be explained away by economics. The economics of running an app in China and the economics of running an app in America are going to be totally different entities with different possibilities and different things you can do to make the app successful. But within China, you have to do these things to be successful. Otherwise, the Chinese government is going to shut down your app. You just won't have an app anymore. This led me on to thinking about other conspiracy theories, and could they be sort of more explained away by simple stuff? And primarily when I was looking at conspiracy theories, because if you go search conspiracy theories, you get the same like 10, 15. So I'm really just going to talk about those for a little bit. The moon landing is the most famous conspiracy theory ever, that the moon landing was faked. And the only problem I have with that, so like the stuff they point out, the reflections, this was on a soundstage, they don't move right, all this other stuff. The issue I have with that is the sheer volume of people involved in that level of conspiracy means there are that many people that would be leaks. So the fact that so many people are involved, so you have all the people who are, in this case, pretending to be technicians who work for NASA, which is maybe a fake agency. You have all the people on the soundstage. You have the actors themselves, the pretend astronauts. You have all the people who are filming stuff and making stuff, all the people who made all the stuff, the engineers who made the fake ship that fake shot off into space. All of those people, like we're talking now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, none of them leaked it. None of them brought out definitive proof that the moon landing was faked. All of it comes from documentary evidence. So like, oh, I have this picture and I found this one thing in this picture that convinces me that it's not real. But I'm not saying that humanity is moral, but there is a certain amount of people who would be like, this is hard for me to live with. And now we're getting to the point where a lot of the people who were involved in that project, they're getting old and they're going to die. There's no reason for them to hide it anymore. I'm going to be dead in 5 years. I mean, the government can't come after me and kill me if you think the conspiracy goes that far. There's absolutely no reason for me not to just tell the truth before I die. And they're not doing that. None of the astronauts have come forward and do that. None of the engineers have come forward and do that. None of the people who are working on the supposed sound stage have done that. All those people are just keeping their mouth shut. And it just doesn't make sense anymore, because living with that lie the entirety of your life is a burden. And someone sooner or later, statistically, is going to have that burden's going to be too much for them and they would crack. And since that's not happening, that in itself convinces me it is more likely that it really happened than not. I'm not saying it did or didn't, but I'm thinking it's more likely it did happen. Secondary to that, there's all the technology that we've gained from all the stuff they've used to design spaceships and living on spaceships and stuff, like Velcro is one of the more classic examples. But why do we have Velcro? Because they needed something that would hold stuff down in space, and you couldn't, tape everything to everything. It would be too wasteful, too difficult. Velcro is a product of the space program. Now, that could also have been developed by people on the ground, but why? Why go through the effort of developing Velcro if you're not actually going to use it in space? So then I got into some other, I have 3 more, so I thought it would be more fun to do. When COVID was introduced to the world, it's now 3 to 4 years ago. So I remember reading about it 4 years ago, and then it came to Japan where I live, and it was a problem. COVID kills old people. And it's not, designed to do that. It's just old people have weaker immune systems. They're more susceptible to disease, that kind of stuff. COVID could be quite rough if you had underlying conditions, which old people are, those underlying conditions are more likely to exist. But the conspiracy theory in Japan was that COVID was designed by the government to kill off all the old people so they wouldn't have to pay out the pension. So that this would basically essentially save the economy in Japan and across Asia. There are like too many. China and Japan are all both suffering from low birth rates. They have more old people than young people. This is going to be more of a burden on healthcare, on the pension. It causes a lot of problems because you need young people to support old people, and we just don't have enough people to do that. So one solution: create a disease that doesn't have a big impact on young people and will actually kill off old people. And off you go. You have your new conspiracy theory. That falls apart to me only because pretty much every disease, just the flu, the cold, the common cold, any disease you can come up with is going to kill old people in larger numbers than young people. So you don't need a conspiracy theory to explain why that's happening. It's just older people are more susceptible to diseases. That's just the problem with getting old. One of the ones that came out was 5G towers. So the introduction of 5G was around the same time as COVID. This would cause COVID. I found that interesting because a lot of the people who were saying 5G causes COVID were also the people who were saying that COVID doesn't exist. So they had the little sort of dichotomy issue in their thinking because they were saying that COVID's not a thing, but then 5G causes COVID. So either those people hated each other, because one of them saying COVID is real, but 5G is causing it. The other group is saying that COVID is not real at all. It's just a fake. I had someone come at me on Twitter for a video I did talking about COVID, and they said it's just a flu. And I'm like, well, you could actually say, yes, COVID is just a flu, but it's a flu that's more communicable. It's a flu that kills more people. So, I mean, calling it just a flu doesn't reduce the number of deaths as a result of this just a flu. But the interesting idea that 5G towers were causing COVID, because the 5G towers undermine your immune system. I was just sitting there wondering, like, I don't see how those waves do it. Like, I guess, I don't know. I'm a little stuck on that one. Because they never explained how the 5G towers are weakening your immune system. They were just, this is one of the problems with conspiracies in general, is the lack of specificity. Is they're saying A causes B, and if you ask how does A cause B, they can't answer. So I can't argue the point because I don't have enough knowledge of how the points are supposed to be connected. I don't have enough knowledge of science to be able to explain away the thing they're saying. I know I've had 5G in my pocket for years and years and years, and I don't believe it's affected my immunity, or maybe I'm particularly robust, or who knows what happened there. They then took it a step farther and said the vaccine. So 5G is causing COVID so that you have to get the vaccine. So the vaccine will have a tracking implant in it that will then go into your body so the government can track you. The government can already track you. There's no reason to put 5G chips into your body. And they can track you because you have a smartphone. If you're reading like these, a lot of this stuff comes from Twitter. If you're reading this stuff on Twitter, you're probably reading people who have posted this stuff from their phone. Is very likely. I mean, maybe they have a computer and stuff, but people have computers. They probably have smartphones too. Smartphones have GPS. The government of almost every country, the companies that make these smartphones, they can turn on the GPS whenever they want and find you. And the fact is, everyone who has a smartphone is carrying around that smartphone 99% of the time. Maybe you don't have it on you when you sleep, but it's probably right next to your bed, which means the government knows when you're in bed sleeping. A very interesting sidebar is in Japan they have love hotels. Now, love hotels are where couples go to have personal relationships, which is fine. It primarily was set up because a lot of young people don't have apartments. They live with their parents and stuff like that, which causes issues when you want to get intimate with your partner. Maybe you have a family and you have grandparents and kids in the same house, and it's not conducive to a romantic relationship. So you can go to a love hotel. Of course, these are also used by a lot of people who cheat on a lot of other people. So those are dead zones when it comes to cellular things. So basically, my phone will not track me if I go into a love hotel. But I actually think that's just as bad, because if suddenly I'm in the area of a love hotel and my phone signal drops out for, let's say, 2 or 3 hours, and then my signal picks up again 2-3 hours later as I walk away from the area with the love hotel in it, I think that's telling you all the information you need. Technically, it's not a lie. It's a lie of omission, which is a very interesting kind of lying to do, or a kind of interesting block. So if you go to court, you can say, this is just saying that I was not being tracked. It doesn't say I was in a love hotel. So how can you can't draw that conclusion. But I think any logical person can draw the conclusion. If you're in a dead zone and that dead zone's only in a love hotel for 2 hours, we know exactly where you are, and we can therefore extrapolate what you were doing. The chips, there is no chip small enough to go through the head of a needle right now that I know of, but of course conspiracy theorists will say that's been developed. Maybe the vaccine itself is some kind of nanotechnology. I'll give them that. I'll be fine with that. But there's no need to go to that extreme if you have a cell phone in your pocket and any government agency can just be like, please show us where that person is, this with this phone number, and they can show, oh, it's in this car driving at this fast at this area. We've just pinged it off 3 cell towers. We've triangulated his position. We now know exactly where that person is. Oh, wait, they're in a dead zone. They're probably in that love hotel. So it was the fact that it's not necessary. So I believe in laziness of human nature. We're going to actually not find the most efficient way to do something because it's the most efficient way. We're going to find the most efficient way to do something because we don't want to do that much work. Why go through the trouble of creating 5G that creates coronavirus? That means people then have to get a vaccine that you can then inject a tracking system into when you could just track their phones. There might be a few people who don't have phones, but we have surveillance systems everywhere. I do Ninja News Japan, and on Ninja News Japan, regularly I talk about a crime, and the crime was solved by just following the person who committed the crime by tracking them on surveillance video. So they go from place to place to place. There's a camera here, camera in the subway, camera at this door, and then the police just follow them all the way home, and then they show up at their house and go like, "Hi, you're under arrest." You don't need to inject people to keep track of them. It's actually very easy to keep track of people already. Which takes us to sort of one of the bigger ones, the flat earthers. Now, flat earthers, I'm not going to get too harsh on flat earthers. I do find it difficult to accept that every planet in the solar system is a globe except Earth. That's the bit that would be my sticking point as a non-flat earther, is like, if you're going to convince me, you have to convince me why everything else is a globe and this is not a globe, because that in itself doesn't make sense to me. But flat earthers, there's a large group of them who do not believe Australia exists. And this is related to the previous 5G coronavirus, injecting you with a vaccine to track you. Why are you making it that complicated? So I'm making my conspiracy theory. I'm making my conspiracy. We're going to try to convince everyone that the world is round. So the world is actually flat. We're going to give you that. We're going to take the time to convince everyone that the world is round. What we're going to do is add into that roundness an entire continent of people to just add that layer of complication to our conspiracy theory, which that part makes no sense to me. So the flat earthers will tell you that Australia doesn't exist. If you meet someone who's taken a trip to Australia, what they've done is gotten in an airplane, flown around in a circle in the air, then landed somewhere in Texas, where every Australian person they meet is an actor. And then the question comes up, again, this hits the 2 points that we've hit previously. Why? Why would I make it that complicated? If I was going to convince you that the world was round, I would just not include Australia. It would just be easier to not have to make a place where we have to fly everyone to convince them the world is round. And I don't see how having Australia makes you think the world is rounder than a world without Australia in it. And then we get to the same thing as the fake moon landing. The sheer volume of people. So you need all the people who are in Texas pretending to be Australian. You need all the pilots, all the people who work for airlines, all the people who do engineering and stuff, who organize all this stuff. You need all the cartographers, all those people. And now we're talking I would say probably millions of people need to all be included and agree with the conspiracy theory to A, hide the fact that the earth is round, and B, try to convince everyone that a place called Australia exists when it doesn't. I don't see the benefit to that, and I don't see why no one over time would crack. There's been no one who works in cartography who goes, "Oh, you know what? I just put Australia down. It was pretty awesome that day." There's no pilots who've come forward and said, "Yeah, I just flew around in a circle for 14 hours and landed in Texas, and everyone in this one town in Texas uses an Australian accent," which is why the Australian accent is so ridiculous in the first place, because it's not real. It's just been made up. The sheer volume of people who need to be complicit makes it unreasonable. So that is kind of my sticking point. When you get to a saturation point of numbers is when a conspiracy theory starts to fall apart, because some of those numbers would come forward sooner or later. I'm not saying right away, but they would come forward sooner or later in an attempt to say look, I'm now 80 years old. I was part of the moon landing. I was part of making up Australia. I'm going to tell you the truth because I'm going to die in 2 years and it doesn't matter anymore. And I think the world should know the truth. That has not happened in any real way. We get one more conspiracy theory. And it's a little lighter one, which I'm glad because I didn't want to end off with flat earth and COVID, is New Coke. So for a while, I think it was the 80s, Coca-Cola Corporation had Coke, and then they made New Coke. And the conspiracy theory is they purposefully made an inferior product to kind of wash away the memory of how good Coke was, so that later on they could reintroduce Coke Classic with cheaper ingredients and a therefore cheaper product, but then everyone would like it better because they're comparing it to New Coke, which went away a few years later. The only reason I actually don't believe that conspiracy theory is because the president of Coca-Cola Corporation came forward and said, we are neither that stupid nor that smart. So as an advertising campaign to tank your own product so that you could then bring back your previous product at a cheaper price is a stroke of genius. Because when everyone's clamoring for, I like Coke, the new Coke is not as good, I would love Coke Classic. We bring back Coke Classic at the same price, but it's a little cheaper. But now it's been a year. I don't remember what Coke Classic tastes like. I'm just happy to have my Coke Classic back. That's a genius piece of marketing. And he said, just quite frankly, we're not that smart. But also the risk you would have to take to tank your own product and then know it's going to be successful. He said that we're also not that stupid. And I agree with both those points. So when we get to conspiracy theories, I would actually say economics is really the thing that's going to explain whether it's real or not. The economics of TikTok explain exactly why the algorithm is different in different regions. I think there's probably an Asian TikTok. There's a Chinese one specifically because they have their internal internet. There's an American one, probably America's. They probably have their own algorithm. And that has nothing to do with a conspiracy theory to promote science in China and degrade the Western demon. It's just because we have to make the Chinese government happy to sell our product, and we have to make American youth happy to sell our product. The moon landing, again, the sheer volume would be the first problem, the volume of people involved, but also economically, it doesn't really make sense to fake the moon landing. Like, there's no benefit to it that is so beyond other than like we have gone to another planet. Like, there's no value in that other than like, because again, the moon landing was a significant event. And then people go like, why hasn't it been replicated? Well, it hasn't been replicated because there's not that much there. There's nothing to go get. Like, if they'd found something worth bringing back, I guarantee we would have gone back a million times. It just turns out that it's a big rock with not much on it. COVID, designed to kill off people in Asia, it hasn't solved the problem, so it wasn't successful. So as a conspiracy theory, I found that one really interesting, but it didn't really do the thing it was supposed to do. It's certainly not in the numbers, not enough to actually change the economy in Japan and other Asian countries. Tracking people, there's no reason to economically go through all that effort, like to create the vaccine with the tracking stuff in it. Why go through that much money when you can just track people on their cell phones? Japan, probably much like America, has like a 60, 70, 80% saturation rate with their smartphones. Like, Japan's like 80 or 90 with phones, and like 60% of those are smartphones. It's just way cheaper to actually, like, people are already carrying a tracking device around in their pocket. Why would we go invent another one? The flat earth one, again, money. Why would we spend that much money creating a system to create a fake Australia when we don't have to? And then the effort involved doesn't make any sense. And then New Coke, I think he explains it. Yeah, we're not that smart. We're also not that stupid. Hopefully you're not that smart and you're not that stupid that you fall for any of these conspiracy theories.